The year was 2347, and humanity had finally received an invitation that changed everything. After 200 years of space travel, after building colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, after sending probes to distant stars, humans had been noticed. The Galactic Assembly, a council of 73 alien civilizations, had sent a formal message to Earth. They wanted to meet the newcomers. Commander Lisa Brennan stood on the bridge of the starship, Endurance, and watched the stars blur as the ship jumped through hyperspace. She was 42 years old, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had been chosen for this mission because she was calm under pressure and because she knew how to talk to difficult people. The diplomats back on Earth had warned her that these aliens might be very difficult indeed. The Endurance was not alone. 2 escort ships flew alongside it, carrying a total of 120 crew members. It was the largest diplomatic mission in human history, and everyone on board knew that the future of their species depended on what happened next. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison walked onto the bridge and stood beside Lisa. He was her second in command, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that rarely smiled. He had grown up in the asteroid mine colonies, where life was hard and people learned to be tough. He did not trust aliens. He did not trust anyone he had not fought beside. "We're about to exit hyperspace," he said. "The crew is ready." Lisa nodded. "How's morale?" "Nervous, excited. Some of them have been dreaming about this moment their whole lives." Jake paused. "Others think we're walking into a trap. And what do you think?" Jake considered the question. "I think we're about to find out what the universe really thinks of us." The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the view screen, Lisa saw something that took her breath away. A station floated in the darkness, but it was unlike any station humans had ever built. It was made of crystal, or something that looked like crystal, and it glowed with soft blue light. It was enormous, perhaps 50 kilometers across, shaped like a flower with petals reaching out into space. "Velaris Prime," Lisa whispered. "The heart of the Galactic Assembly." The communications officer looked up from her console. "Commander, we're being hailed. They're sending docking instructions." "Follow them exactly," Lisa ordered. "We don't want to give anyone a reason to complain." The Endurance moved slowly toward the station. As they got closer, Lisa could see other ships docked along the crystal petals. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, in shapes and sizes she had never imagined. Some looked like living things, with curves and tendrils. Others were sharp and angular, made of metals that gleamed like gold. The human ship, with its gray hull and practical design, looked plain and ugly beside them. Dr. Megan Cole, the chief science officer, joined them on the bridge. She was a small woman with red hair and glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. She had spent her entire career studying alien signals and dreaming of this moment. Her hands were shaking with excitement. "The diversity is incredible," she said, staring at the view screen. "Each of those ships represents a different civilization, a different biology, a different way of thinking. We're seeing the collected wisdom of thousands of years of galactic history. Let's hope they're willing to share some of that wisdom," Lisa replied. The docking procedure took almost an hour. Human ships used different systems than the station, and the automated protocols had to be adjusted several times. When they finally connected, Lisa gathered her team in the airlock. Jake stood at her right, Megan at her left. Behind them was Sergeant Danny Price, head of security, a man who looked like he was made of solid rock. He carried no weapons, as per assembly rules, but Lisa doubted he needed any. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the station. The first thing Lisa noticed was how light she felt. The station's artificial gravity was much weaker than Earth's, perhaps a third of what she was used to. She had to be careful not to bounce with each step. The second thing she noticed was the smell. The air was clean, almost too clean, with a faint sweetness that reminded her of flowers. A creature was waiting for them. It floated in the air, a being made of translucent jelly, with no visible eyes or mouth. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome to Velaris Prime. I am Counselor Threx of the Silvari Dominion. I will escort you to the assembly chamber." Lisa bowed her head politely. "Thank you, Counselor. We are honored to be here." Threx made a sound that might have been laughter. "Indeed. Come. The others are eager to see you." They followed the floating alien through corridors of crystal and light. Other beings passed them, creatures of every shape and size. Some walked on many legs. Some floated like Threx. Some moved in ways that Lisa could not understand. All of them stopped to stare at the humans, and Lisa heard whispers in languages her translator could not process. The assembly chamber was a vast dome at the center of the station. Thousands of seats rose up in circles around a central platform, and most of them were filled. Lisa had never seen so many aliens in one place. She had never imagined so many kinds of life could exist. Counselor Threx floated to the center platform and gestured for the humans to stand beside him. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Fellow members of the Assembly, I present the delegation from Earth. They are the first species from a class 7 gravity world to achieve interstellar travel. They have come to petition for membership." The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. It took Lisa a moment to realize what it was. They were laughing. Counselor Threx turned to face the humans, and though he had no face, Lisa could sense his amusement. "You must understand," he said, "that we have never seen anything like you. Your world has gravity that would crush most species. Your bones are so dense that our scanners mistook them for metal. Your muscles are designed to fight against a force that would kill any of us in minutes. Is that a problem?" Lisa asked, keeping her voice calm. "A problem? No, it is simply amusing. You see, Commander, the Assembly has existed for 12,000 years. In all that time, no species from a high-gravity world has ever joined us. We assumed it was impossible. We assumed that beings like you would be trapped on your planets forever, too heavy to fly, too slow to matter." He gestured at the laughing crowd. "And yet here you are, walking, talking, trying to keep up with the rest of us. It is quite entertaining." Lisa felt her crew tense behind her. She heard Danny's breathing change, heard Jake shift his weight. They wanted to respond, to defend their species, to show these aliens what humans could do. But Lisa had not been chosen for this mission because she was quick to anger. She had been chosen because she knew when to wait. "We did not come here to entertain you," she said quietly. "We came here to join you, to trade with you, to learn from you and teach you in return. We came in peace and friendship." Counselor Threx bobbed in the air. "How charming. Well, we shall see. The Assembly will consider your petition. In the meantime, you are welcome to observe our proceedings. Try not to break anything with those heavy feet of yours." More laughter filled the chamber. Lisa stood still and silent, her face betraying nothing. She did not know that in less than an hour, none of them would be laughing anymore. The laughter in the assembly chamber died suddenly, replaced by a sound that Lisa had heard too many times in her military career. Alarms. Loud, urgent. Screaming alarms that echoed off the crystal walls and made the floating aliens scatter in panic. Counselor Threx's translucent body flickered with colors that Lisa's translator identified as fear. "That is impossible," he said, his voice losing its mocking tone. "That alarm has not sounded in 300 years. What does it mean?" Jake demanded. Before Threx could answer, a massive holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the space around Velaris Prime, and what Lisa saw made her blood run cold. Ships were emerging from hyperspace, dozens of them, then hundreds. They were dark and angular, covered in spikes and weapons that gleamed with cruel purpose. They moved like a swarm of insects, surrounding the station from every direction. "The Kreth," Threx whispered. "The Kreth have come." Megan grabbed Lisa's arm. "I've read about them in the historical files. They're a hive species, a swarm. They conquered half the galaxy before the Assembly drove them back. That was 400 years ago. Everyone thought they were contained in the Outer Rim. Apparently everyone was wrong," Lisa replied. The chamber descended into chaos. Aliens of every species were running, floating, toward the exits. Their screams filled the air in 100 different languages. The humans stood still in the middle of the panic, watching as the holographic display showed the Kreth fleet moving closer. Counselor Threx was already heading toward a side door. "The council members must evacuate. There are emergency shuttles in the lower levels." Lisa grabbed his gelatinous arm. The alien shrieked in pain, his body rippling under her grip. "Let go of me. Do you know how delicate my form is? You could have killed me. How many civilians are on this station?" Lisa demanded. "What does that matter? They cannot all be saved. We must preserve the leadership." Jake stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "Answer the question." "How many?" Threx trembled in Lisa's grip. 40,000. Perhaps more. Tourists, workers, families. But there is no time. The Kreth will breach the outer shields in minutes. Lisa released him, and the alien floated backward, rubbing his arm with obvious distress. She turned to her team. "Danny, contact the Endurance. Tell them to prepare for combat." Danny Price already had his communicator out. "What about the Assembly's defense fleet?" They all looked at the holographic display. The Assembly ships were engaging the Kreth, but it was not going well. The alien vessels were elegant and beautiful, designed by species who valued art over function. They fired beams of colored light and launched missiles that trailed silver smoke. But the Kreth ships absorbed the attacks without slowing. Their weapons, in contrast, cut through the defenders like hot knives through butter. "They're being destroyed," Megan said quietly. "Their ships aren't built for this kind of fight." A bird-like alien approached them, her feathers ruffled with agitation. Lisa's translator identified her as Counselor Savala of the Tithrani. Unlike Threx, she had not fled. "Your assessment is correct," Savala said, her voice high and musical despite her obvious fear. "Our ships are designed for patrol and ceremony. The Kreth have spent 400 years preparing for war. We have spent 400 years pretending war would never come again. How many security forces do you have on the station?" Lisa asked. "Perhaps 300. But they are trained for crowd control, not combat. They have never faced anything like the Kreth." Danny's communicator crackled with Captain Greg Holloway's voice from the Endurance. "Commander, we're reading over 500 enemy vessels. Our escort ships are moving to engage, but we're badly outnumbered. What are your orders?" Lisa made a decision. It was the kind of decision that changed history, though she did not know it at the time. "Deploy the Marines. Every single one. Full combat gear." "Commander, that's only 87 people. Against an invasion force? Just do it, Greg, and tell them to move fast." She turned back to Savala. "Where will the Kreth breach first?" The Tithrani counselor pointed toward the eastern section of the station with one wing. "The civilian quarters. That is where the shields are weakest. They will come for the easy targets first. That is their way. They feed on fear. Then that's where we go." Lisa looked at her team. Jake had already rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms that were thick with muscle. Danny had picked up a metal rod from somewhere, testing its weight in his hands. Even Medan, the scientist, had a determined look in her eyes. They ran. Lisa had forgotten how light she felt in the station's low gravity. On Earth, running was hard work. Her body had to fight against the constant pull of the planet with every step. Here, she felt like she was flying. Her legs pushed off the ground and carried her forward with incredible speed. The others kept pace easily, their Earth-born bodies treating the low gravity like a vacation. They passed screaming civilians, aliens who moved too slowly, who could not run because their bodies had never needed to run. Lisa wanted to help them all, but she knew she could not. The best way to save them was to stop the Kreth. The first breach happened before they reached the eastern section. A section of wall exploded inward, and through the smoke came the nightmares. The Kreth were insectoid, with 6 legs and mandibles that dripped with something green and poisonous. Their exoskeletons were black and shiny, and their compound eyes reflected the light like broken mirrors. They moved fast, faster than any human could run, skittering across the floors and walls and ceilings like spiders. Station security was already there, firing energy weapons at the invaders. The Kreth did not slow down. They reached the guards in seconds, their claws slashing, their mandibles biting. The screams were terrible and brief. Lisa saw a Kreth warrior turn toward a group of fleeing civilians. It was going to catch them. There was no doubt about that. It was simply too fast. Danny Price stepped into its path. The Kreth was moving at perhaps 30 kilometers per hour when it hit him. It probably expected him to fall, to crumble, to die like all the others. Instead, Danny grabbed it by the throat. The alien weighed maybe 40 kilograms. Danny weighed over 100. On Earth, he could bench press twice his body weight. Here, in this light gravity, he felt stronger than he had ever felt in his life. He lifted the Kreth off the ground and slammed it into the floor. The creature's exoskeleton shattered like glass. Green fluid sprayed across the crystal floor. For a moment, everything stopped. The other Kreth froze, their compound eyes focusing on the human who had just killed one of their warriors with his bare hands. The surviving civilians stared in disbelief. Even Lisa felt a shock of surprise. Then Danny smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Who's next?" he asked. The Kreth charged. All of them. Dozens of warriors swarming toward the single human who had dared to defy them. They had no idea what they were getting into. Danny Price had been fighting his whole life. He grew up in the roughest part of Chicago, where you learn to use your fists before you learn to read. He joined the military at 18 and spent the next 20 years in every war zone humanity had to offer. He thought he knew what combat was. He thought he understood violence. He was wrong. What happened in those corridors was not combat. It was something else entirely. The Kreth came at him in waves, their claws slashing, their mandibles snapping. They were fast, faster than any enemy he had ever faced. On their home worlds, they were probably terrifying. Here, against a human who had spent his entire life fighting against the crushing weight of Earth's gravity, they were nothing. Danny caught the first warrior by its leg and swung it like a club, smashing 3 others into the wall. He grabbed another by the head and squeezed until the exoskeleton cracked and the creature went limp. A third tried to jump on his back, but he reached over his shoulder, seized it, and threw it so hard that it flew 50 meters down the corridor and embedded itself in the crystal wall. Jake Morrison was beside him now, his fists red with alien blood. Jake had been a boxer in the military leagues, undefeated in 37 matches. He had never lost because he hit harder than anyone else. In low gravity, his punches were devastating. Each blow shattered exoskeletons and sent Kreth flying like ragdolls. The Endurance's Marines arrived in a thunder of boots on crystal. They came around the corner in perfect formation. 87 men and women who had trained for years in Earth's gravity. They were not the biggest or the strongest humans by Earth standards. Some of them were quite small. But here, in this place, they were giants. Corporal Amy Lynn was barely 160 centimeters tall. She weighed 55 kilograms. The other Marines sometimes teased her for being tiny. When a Kreth warrior charged at her, she kicked it in the chest. The creature flew backward, its exoskeleton caved in, and crashed through a support beam. Amy did not even break stride. Sergeant Tony Reeves had been a wrestler before joining the service. He liked to get close to his enemies, to feel them struggle, to know that he was stronger. The Kreth gave him plenty of opportunities. He grabbed two of them, one in each hand, and smashed them together. The sound was wet, and Final Dot Private Nick Burton was the largest Marine in the unit, 2 meters tall and built like a tank. He did not bother with fancy techniques. He simply ran forward into the Kreth formation like a battering ram. Bodies flew in every direction. Exoskeletons shattered against his armored chest. He laughed as he fought, a deep booming sound that echoed off the walls. Lisa Brennan watched her people fight and felt something she had never expected to feel. Pride, not just in her crew, but in her species. For 200 years, humans had wondered if they would measure up against the other civilizations of the galaxy. They had worried about being too slow, too primitive, too crude. Now she knew the truth. They were not crude. They were forged. Megan Cole stood beside her, taking readings with her scanner. "Commander, look at this. The Kreth exoskeletons are designed for low-gravity environments. They're optimized for speed and agility, but they have almost no structural integrity. Our bones are literally 10 times denser than theirs. That explains why they break so easily," Lisa said. "It's more than that. Their muscles are designed to work against minimal resistance. They've never needed strength because they've never fought anyone who had it. Every species they've conquered evolved in similar conditions." Megan looked up from her scanner, her eyes wide. "We're the first high-gravity species they've ever encountered. They have no idea how to fight us." A Kreth warrior broke through the Marine line and sprinted toward them. Lisa did not think. She simply moved. Her fist connected with the creature's face, and she felt the exoskeleton give way like thin plastic. The alien collapsed at her feet, twitching once before going still. Megan stared at her commander. "Did you just punch that thing to death?" Lisa looked at her hand. Her knuckles were scraped, but nothing was broken. "I think I did. You're a pilot. You've never had any combat training." "On Earth, no. But here." Lisa flexed her fingers. "Here, I don't need training." The battle raged through the station for the next 2 hours. The Kreth kept coming, pouring through breach after breach, but they could not adapt. Their tactics were designed for overwhelming weaker enemies through speed and numbers. Against humans, speed meant nothing. The Marines could not move as fast as the Kreth, but they did not need to. They simply stood their ground and let the enemy come to them. Every Kreth that got close died. The civilians began to understand what was happening. At first, they fled from the humans just as they fled from the Kreth. They had been told all their lives that the gravity dwellers were slow and clumsy. Now they watched those slow, clumsy creatures tear through the Kreth like paper. Counselor Savala found Lisa near the main civilian shelter, where thousands of aliens had gathered for protection. The Tethrani's feathers were disheveled, and her eyes were wide with shock. "How is this possible?" she asked. "The Kreth have conquered 60 worlds. They destroyed the Malachor Empire in a single season. They are the terror of the galaxy." Lisa wiped green blood from her forehead. "The Malachor evolved on a world with 0.2 Earth gravity, didn't they?" "Yes. How did you know?" "Lucky guess." Lisa looked at the shelter, at the thousands of frightened faces staring out at her. The Kreth have never fought anyone who grew up carrying their own weight. Every species in the assembly evolved to be light and efficient. You didn't need strength because your worlds didn't demand it. But Earth is different. Earth tries to crush you every second of every day. If you want to survive there, you have to be strong. If you want to thrive, you have to be stronger. Then you're saying that your entire species is like this. All of you? Lisa thought about the people back home. The athletes who could run 40 kilometers without stopping. The workers who lifted heavy loads all day long. The children who played games that would break the bodies of any alien in the assembly. Yes, she said. All of us. Savala was quiet for a long moment. We laughed at you, she said finally. When you arrived, we laughed at you for being slow and heavy. We thought you were lesser than us. I remember. We were wrong. We were very, very wrong. A Marine ran up to Lisa and saluted. Commander, we've secured the eastern section. The Kreth are pulling back. Casualties? None, ma'am. A few scratches, some bruised knuckles. That's it. Lisa nodded. Good work. Tell the others to rest while they can. This isn't over yet. She was right. The Kreth on the station were just the beginning. Outside, in the darkness of space, their fleet was still waiting. And they had finally realized that the beings from the high-gravity world were not the easy prey they had expected. The Hive Queen was paying attention now. And she was not happy. The Hive Queen of the Kreth swarm sat at the center of her command ship and tried to understand what was happening. She had lived for 400 years. She had commanded the conquest of 60 worlds. She had watched entire civilizations burn at her order. In all that time, she had never felt fear. Until now, her warriors were dying. Not just dying, but being destroyed. The reports coming from the station showed images that made no sense. Small creatures, soft-looking creatures with pink skin and strange proportions, were tearing through her elite warriors like they were made of paper. One of the creatures, a female with brown fur on her head, had killed 17 warriors with nothing but her hands. Another, a large male, had thrown a warrior so hard that it went through 3 walls before stopping. What are they? The Hive Queen demanded. Her intelligence drone hovered nearby, its mechanical voice calm and precise. They call themselves humans, Queen Mother. They are from a world designated Sol 3, in a system near the edge of assembly space. I know where they are from. I want to know what they are. How can they move like that? How can they fight like that? Sol 3 is a Category 7 gravity world, Queen Mother. The Hive Queen's mandibles clicked with disbelief. That is impossible. Nothing survives on Category 7 worlds. Nothing intelligent. They did, Queen Mother. And there are 8 billion more of them on their homeworld. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 8 billion. The Hive Queen had conquered worlds with populations in the tens of billions. But those had been weak species. Fragile things that died when you looked at them too hard. If there were 8 billion of these humans, each one capable of what she was seeing on the station, no, she refused to accept it. The Kreth had ruled the stars for 1,000 years before the assembly pushed them back. They would not be defeated by a handful of gravity dwellers from an insignificant world. Send in the second wave, she commanded. All of them. I want every warrior we have on that station. Queen Mother, perhaps we should consider a withdrawal. The humans have proven to be. I gave you an order. The intelligence drone hesitated, then bowed its mechanical head. As you command, Queen Mother. On the station, Lisa Brennan received word that more Kreth ships were approaching. She gathered her Marines in the main corridor and looked at their faces. They were tired but not defeated. Many of them were smiling. For the first time in their lives, they were fighting an enemy that could not hurt them, and they were winning. The Kreth are sending reinforcements, Lisa told them. A lot of reinforcements. They're not going to stop until they take the station or until they're all dead. Then they're all going to die, Danny Price said. The other Marines laughed and nodded. Lisa smiled despite herself. That's the plan. But we're not going to do it alone. Captain Holloway, what's our fleet status? Holloway's voice crackled through the communicator. The Endurance and our escort ships are holding position. The assembly fleet has been destroyed, Commander. We're the only thing standing between the Kreth and the station. Can you engage the enemy fleet? There was a pause. We're outnumbered about 50 to 1. Our ships are tough, but those aren't great odds. What if you had help? Lisa turned to Counselor Savala, who had been listening to the conversation. You said the assembly fleet was destroyed. Were there any survivors? A few ships escaped, Savala said. Perhaps 20. They're scattered around the system, hiding behind moons and asteroids. They're too afraid to engage. Contact them. Tell them the humans need backup. Savala's feathers ruffled with surprise. They won't come. They've seen what the Kreth can do. They'll run before they fight. Tell them anyway. Tell them that the humans are not running. Tell them that we're going to stand and fight with or without them. And tell them that if we win, they'll never have to be afraid of the Kreth again. The Tethrani counselor looked at Lisa for a long moment. Then she nodded and moved to a communication terminal. The second wave hit the station 20 minutes later. This time, there were thousands of Kreth, pouring through breaches all over the structure. The Marines split into teams and took up defensive positions. The fighting was brutal and endless. Aliens screamed and died. Crystal walls shattered. The air filled with the smell of smoke and blood, but the humans held. Jake Morrison led a team of 12 Marines into the reactor section, where 100 Kreth were trying to overload the station's power core. They fought in narrow corridors where the aliens could not use their speed. Jake's fists were red up to the elbows by the time the last Kreth fell. Amy Lynn defended a civilian shelter with only 3 other Marines. When the Kreth broke through the doors, she stood in the gap and killed everyone that tried to pass. Later, when they counted the bodies, there were over 200. Danny Price found himself alone in a cargo bay, surrounded by at least 50 warriors. He fought for 20 minutes straight, never stopping, never slowing. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found him sitting on a pile of broken exoskeletons, breathing hard but uninjured. Outside the station, Captain Holloway watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Kreth fleet was moving to surround his ships. He had 3 vessels against over 500. The math was not in his favor. Sir, his weapons officer said, the enemy is charging weapons. They're going to fire. Holloway nodded. Let them. Our shields are designed to handle the gravitational stresses of high-speed maneuvers. Whatever they throw at us, we can take it. The Kreth opened fire. Thousands of energy beams lanced toward the human ships. The tactical display lit up with impacts. Holloway gripped the arms of his chair and waited. The shields flickered. The ship shuddered, but they held. Damage report, Holloway ordered. Shields at 87%, sir. Minor hull stress. No injuries. Holloway smiled. Human ships were built for humans. They were designed to withstand acceleration forces that would turn any assembly crew into paste. Their shields were reinforced to survive impacts that would vaporize other vessels. The Kreth had just hit them with everything they had, and it barely scratched the paint. Return fire, Holloway commanded. Target their command ships first. The Endurance's main cannon was a mass driver, a weapon that used electromagnetic fields to accelerate a solid tungsten slug to a significant fraction of light speed. It was a simple weapon, crude by assembly standards, but it carried enough kinetic energy to crack a small moon. The first shot hit a Kreth cruiser dead center. The ship did not explode so much as cease to exist. One moment it was there, bristling with weapons and warriors. The next moment it was a cloud of expanding debris. The second shot hit another cruiser. Then another. Then another. The Kreth fleet began to scatter. They had never encountered weapons like this. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams, not solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. They had no defense against human brutality. And then, on the edge of the tactical display, new contacts appeared. 20 assembly ships, the survivors of the initial battle, were emerging from hiding. They were damaged and scared, but they were coming. "Commander Brennan," Holloway said over the communicator, "it looks like your message got through." Lisa watched through a viewport as the battle turned. "Counselor Savala, tell those ships to target the Kreth from behind. We'll keep them focused on us. You want to use yourselves as bait? We want to finish this." The Hive Queen watched her fleet die and finally understood the truth. These humans were not like the other species she had conquered. They were not soft. They were not weak. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were predators. She gave the order to retreat, but it was too late. The human ships were cutting through her fleet like wolves through sheep. Her warriors on the station were being slaughtered. 400 years of conquest, 400 years of terror, and it was ending here, against creatures she had never even heard of until today. Her command ship was the last to fall. The human weapon hit her reactor core, and everything went white. The silence that followed the battle was the loudest thing Lisa Brennan had ever heard. For hours, the station had been filled with screams and explosions and the terrible sounds of combat. Now there was nothing but the hum of life support systems and the distant crackle of fires being extinguished. She stood in the middle of what had been the main assembly chamber. The crystal dome was cracked in a dozen places, and the seats were filled with debris instead of delegates. But the structure had survived. The station had survived. Most importantly, the people had survived. 41,000 civilians had been on Velaris Prime when the Kreth attacked. When the final count was made, over 40,000 were still alive. Some were injured. Some were traumatized. But they were breathing because 87 human Marines had stood between them and an army of nightmares. Jake Morrison walked up beside Lisa, his uniform torn and stained with green blood. He looked exhausted but satisfied. "The last Kreth resistance has been eliminated. We've secured the entire station. Casualties? 12 wounded. Mostly minor. Private Burton broke his hand punching through a Kreth skull, and Sergeant Reeves pulled a muscle throwing too many bodies." Jake paused. "No deaths, Commander." "Not one." Lisa closed her eyes and let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. "The fleet? All ships intact. The Endurance took some damage, but nothing that can't be repaired. Captain Holloway is requesting permission to begin salvage operations on the Kreth vessels." "Granted." "Have Megan coordinate with the assembly survivors. They might want to study the wreckage." Jake nodded and moved away. Lisa remained in the chamber, looking up at the cracked dome and the stars beyond. She had come here hoping for peace and friendship. She had found war instead. But perhaps, she thought, something good could still come from all this destruction. The memorial service was held 3 days later. The assembly had lost thousands in the initial attack, including many council members who had failed to escape in time. Councillor Thrax was among the dead. He had been trying to board an evacuation shuttle when a Kreth warrior caught him. No one mourned him very much. Lisa stood before the new assembly, a smaller gathering than before, but no less important. The seats were filled with survivors and representatives who had traveled from across the galaxy when they heard the news. Word of the battle had spread faster than light itself, carried by communication relays and rumor networks. Everyone wanted to see the humans who had defeated the Kreth. Councillor Savala spoke first. her voice echoing through the repaired chamber. 3 days ago, this station was attacked by an enemy we thought we had defeated 4 centuries ago. The Kreth returned with a fleet of 500 ships and an army of tens of thousands. They came to destroy us, as they have destroyed so many others. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the assembly. They failed. They failed because of a species we had dismissed as slow and primitive. They failed because of humans. Savala turned to face Lisa. Commander Brennan, your Marines saved over 40,000 lives. Your ships destroyed an enemy fleet that outnumbered them 50-1. You did what no other species in the history of the Assembly has ever done. You made the Kreth afraid. A murmur ran through the chamber. Lisa could see the mix of emotions on the alien faces around her. Fear, yes, but also something else. Hope. On behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I offer humanity a formal apology. We judged you by our own standards and found you lacking. We did not understand that your world, your terrible, crushing world, had given you gifts beyond our comprehension. You are not slow. You are patient. You are not weak. You are so strong that you must constantly restrain yourselves just to live among us without causing harm. Lisa stepped forward to respond. She had prepared a speech, full of diplomatic language and careful phrases. She decided to throw it away. 3 days ago, you laughed at us. You called us freaks. You said we were trapped by our gravity, limited by our world, unable to keep up with the rest of the galaxy. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species she had never seen before and might never see again. You were right about one thing. We are shaped by our gravity. But you misunderstood what that means. On Earth, a child learns to walk by fighting against a force that would crush any of you. Our babies develop muscles that would be considered superhuman anywhere else in the galaxy. We run, we jump, we climb, we fight, not because we want to, but because our world demands it. Every human who has ever lived has spent their entire existence at war with their own planet. Lisa held up her hand, flexing the fingers that had killed Kreth warriors with a single punch. That war made us strong. It made us tough. It made us stubborn. And it made us survivors. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We do not leave anyone behind. These are not just words to us. They are the lessons our world taught us, written into our bones and muscles and blood. We did not come to the galaxy looking for enemies. We came looking for friends. We still want that. But if friendship is not possible, if the galaxy sees us only as monsters to be feared, then we will accept that too. We will survive. We always have. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly Savala began to click her beak together. The sound was soft at first, but it grew louder as others joined in. Lisa's translator told her what it meant. Applause, respect, acceptance. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with a permanent seat on the High Council. More than that, they were offered command of a new unified defense force. A military alliance designed to prevent anything like the Kreth invasion from ever happening again. In the weeks that followed, requests poured in from across the galaxy. 93 worlds wanted protection treaties with Earth. Hundreds more wanted trade agreements, cultural exchanges, anything that would tie them to the humans. The species that had been laughed at was now the most sought-after ally in the galaxy. Lisa Brennan returned to Earth a hero, though she never felt like one. She had done what needed to be done, nothing more. The real heroes, she said in every interview, were the Marines who had fought on Velaris Prime. They were the ones who had shown the galaxy what humans could do. Danny Price retired from the military and opened a training facility for alien security forces. Species from across the galaxy came to learn how humans fought, how they moved, how they thought. Most of them could never match human strength, but they could learn human tactics. They could learn human determination. Jake Morrison took command of the new defense fleet, leading a force of human and alien ships that patrolled the borders of assembly space. Under his watch, no enemy ever came close to threatening another world. The memory of what happened to the Kreth was enough to deter most would-be conquerors. Megan Cole published a paper on the biological advantages of high-gravity evolution. It became required reading in universities across the galaxy. She spent the rest of her career studying how different environments shaped different species, and her work helped bridge the gap between humans and their alien allies. And on Earth, a new generation grew up knowing their place in the universe. They were not the underdogs anymore. They were not the primitives from the heavy world. They were the children of gravity, forged in the hardest forge the galaxy had ever known. They were human. The galaxy had laughed at them once. It would never laugh again. Years later, when historians wrote about the Battle of Velaris Prime, they always mentioned the same thing. The Kreth had come expecting easy prey. They had found something else entirely. They had found a species that refused to break, that refused to bow, that refused to die. They had found gravity's children, and gravity's children had made them pay.